Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome to Islamic Action, brought to you by Guerrilla Minded Productions. My name is Simon Marciniak. I am going to be breaking down an important and relevant topic today, which is the topic of the hijab ban. Some of you may be aware that the highest court in Europe, the European Court of Justice, issued a ruling saying, and to put it in crude terms just to begin with before I break it down, that it was permissible for employers to impose restrictions on the way a person dressed in the workplace, even if that infringed their religious beliefs or religious leanings. In this particular instance, a woman was dismissed from her employment for refusing to remove the hijab. The company in that case, G4S, decided that that her wearing the hijab was infringed their what they called a neutrality policy, the overriding need to look secular, to look religious, if you like, and she was dismissed for that reason. The case has now gone to the ECJ, who decided that G4S were within their rights to make that decision, but with limitations that I'll come on to in a moment. Now this has created quite a furore in the media. Many Islamic scholars have decried this ruling, saying how it's a further restriction on freedom, how it's hypocritical for the Western powers to be seen to be promoters of liberty, freedom, freedom of choice, freedom of religion, but at the same time to allow this particular ruling to pass. If you look at it in some respects, there have been many legal commentators who've looked at various court rulings, not just from the ECJ, but from the European Court of Human Rights, which is a court that sits in Strasbourg, and the right to manifest one's religion, which is set out in Article 9 of the European Convention on Human Rights. And scholars have, legal scholars that is, have said that it's there's a tendency against Islam, so there have been restrictions on wearing the hijab on campus, in front of primary school children, in gymnasia. There have been various restrictions of this nature, whereas at the same time they've said that, for example, a BA stewardess is allowed to wear a cross on a plane because it doesn't interfere with that company's corporate branding. So numerous legal scholars have remarked how anti-Islam these rulings appear. Now I would try and temper that and say, okay, you can look at it in that sense, but let's look at it in a bit more detail about what this decision said. It said that yes, G4S were allowed to restrict this woman's right to wear the hijab, the headscarf, but only so long as they applied that policy absolutely strictly. So what will happen now is that her case will go back to the national courts to decide whether that there was any discrimination, because that's what the case is about. It's about discrimination. And it would be surprising, I would suggest, if within G4S as a whole, whether it's her local branch or it's wider than that, whether nobody in that organisation ever wore a cross, ever wore a Sikh turban, ever wore an I Love Jesus t-shirt, any of these things, because as soon as that happens, all she needs to do is point that out and say, well, look, they've allowed that to pass, but they've limited my right, so they've discriminated. So while they're allowed to dictate what people are not allowed to dress or what they're allowed to wear, they've discriminated my case. So while at first blush it looks really quite draconian, when you open it up a bit, you can see that well, actually it's it's not quite what it appears. Second thing I want to mention is G4S itself. Now they have this policy, but I think at the end of the day they're going to be the victims, because all that needs to happen is for a competitor to come along and say, Well, look at us. We have an open policy. We don't care what people wear. We're cool with the hijab. We're cool with the cross. Come and work for us. So that what company, whoever they are, have now then got a commercial advantage over G4S, who's seen as the devil, the nasty person. So I wouldn't be as concerned about this ruling as people have been, and I think you just need to look a bit wider, look a bit more laterally at it, and see what the possibilities and the ramifications are. So that's my brief précis of that particular case and my views on it. I don't know if there are any questions that people want to pose.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Simon.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Interesting opening statement. What I want to ask is, you mentioned something at the end, that there is, I'm paraphrasing, people have been whipped up. This has been real headline. And it seems it's been interpreted by the mainstream press, and speaking to Muslims, it seems that Muslims are interpreting it as this is pure vindication against,
Vilification, yeah.
A vilification and a vendetta against Muslims. Why do you think that is the interpretation then? If it's a misinterpretation, why is that a common misinterpretation or misunderstanding?
I think we're living in an age of headline grabbing, aren't we? I mean, everybody plays on it. Trump plays on it. Sound bites, bits of news, headlines. People latch on that rather than the actual content of that headline. So what lies underneath it? So to rip something out of context and to say, BBC headline, ECJ permits ban of hijab. People just latch on that without looking beyond it and saying, okay, well, reading between the lines, what does this mean? What does it mean for me? What can I do about it? I think people just need to stand on their own 2 feet and say, yeah, okay, it's wrong. I'm entitled to. I have a belief in what I wear. So how can I work with this decision? What does it mean for me? How can I?
What's the implication?
Yeah, what's the implications for me? Like if anything happens, you go to a lawyer, you seek advice. What does it mean for how can I protect my position? So these knee-jerk reactions aren't at all helpful, in my opinion.
I think it's fascinating, this particular issue that you mentioned there, Brother Simon, and Bismillah Rahim. As you said, really, maybe it is a storm in a teacup. But from my perspective, if we read in the Qur'aan concerning the hijab, I think it's chapter 24:31, that doesn't actually mention the head covering. It doesn't say women have to cover their hair. So there's no Islamic injunction, apart from, say, through the hadith, which is not Qur'an anyway, in which Allah commands women to cover their actual head, or head is, ras for head is not there, or shah for hair is not there.
Yeah.
So the ruling in 24:31 is about them covering their bosoms, yeah? I think it's Zaina Hunna, I think in Arabic, if I'm wrong on that. But to cover the particular part, their beauty in a way, which is not their hair. So in a way, women not covering their hair is not really an Islamic issue. So why do you think it's become an Islamic issue? Because maybe, for example, Sikhs cover their hair, Rastafarians cover their hair, the females, so some of the bobble dread Rastafarians, some like nuns or whatever.
Yeah, the Jewish kippah.
The kippah, yeah. So why is the headline jumping out? Is the hijab ban? And why have Muslims, like the Muslim associations or groups, wherever they have, come jumping out and defending and saying this is another attack against Muslims and Muslim women, and this racist attack, it's racism again, Islamophobia, because as you said, it's all religious symbols, right? It's the cross or kippah, anything religious, anything that can be deemed religious. I'm sure, was it the sign of Satan or something? Is that like an upside down cross off 5 points? I mean, 5 pointed star. So why do you think Muslims are quick to always say it's a Muslim thing? And how much relevance is there in terms of it being religious, and also what is the human rights position on it, like in terms of, because I think that if we are for democracy as well in the West, if women should be allowed to cover their hair or not. So in terms of maybe not an attack on Islam, but an attack on women's right, attack on human rights or women's rights. Is there a case for that?
I think that's the point. I mean, what we're talking about are religious symbols. So, it's regardless of what the Qur'an says, it's about the manifestation, how you manifest your religious beliefs. And wearing the headscarf is traditionally speaking a way of manifesting an attachment or association with Islam. So I would say there is a right to be protected there. But I agree with you. There is a degree of hysteria which I think is unwarranted, because nobody's saying you can't go out and wear the hijab in the street. You can't go out to work, and it's not good. The average person this is just a case about G4S. It's not about going tomorrow that you're not going to be stopped from going to the GP surgery or going to school or doing what you want, going to the shops. That's not going to happen. So it's this sort of unhealthy playing the victim card, which which isn't it doesn't. It's not conducive to personal development at all. You just got to look at it sensibly and realise, okay, well, how does it affect me? Is it going to is it going to infringe me in any particular way? And it ought not to, unless you're going to wear the niqab on the streets of France, which we know has been restricted now.
May I interject?
You may.
For a moment. I have a question or comment. I'm not sure how to define it, but what I'm thinking about is the idea of those people who would say it hasn't been restricted yet from being worn in the street in Britain, for example, but these type of decisions
are mission creep, isn't it?
Yeah, they're saying that this is a frog in the pot.
Thin end of the wedge.
Yeah, it's a start of a slippery slope.
Yeah.
There's that argument, and also there's another argument I'd like to bolt on that says, but it isn't a human rights issue. It is a discrimination issue against Muslim women, for example, particularly because it's seen as religious clothing. So in other words, if a non-Muslim woman wants to wrap her hair, cover her hair at work, it won't be religious, so it won't be a problem. But if they know she's a Muslim, then it will be a problem based on her being a Muslim. Not based on her covering her hair or not.
Like a nun sitting in a doctor's surgery, for example.
Yeah. So, are Muslim women not being victimized?
Only if they allow themselves to be. I think people need to. I think people need to assert themselves, and it's education. That's what it's about. And I think that it's important not to get hysterical about these things, not to go in not to go in with this stuff. It's people like us have got to go out there and say, well, actually the message is this. It's not that. It's this. There are anti-Muslim currents out there. Geert Wilders, Marine Le Pen, all these sorts of people. You've just got to keep fighting the fight. And view these things in context. That's my personal view, anyway.
Okay, and lastly as well, what do you think of the Prime Minister recently coming out and expressing her, her view that she doesn't think this is conducive to societal harmony, therefore she will not be allowing that particular law to run concurrent within England. So she's not allowing that law, the ECJ law. You won't be able to discriminate against someone for their religious beliefs or symbolism. What do you think of that?
Well, I think, of course, that's it's convenient timing, isn't it, with Brexit and so on, to come out with these things. That's good PR. That's how I see it. I mean, that's her. Who knows what the next? Yeah.
All these Muslims are quite happy. They've all said that we should write a letter thanking her. Like,
Yeah, but why? But what's she done for you at the end of the day? Right, letter thanking her, what for allowing you to do what you're doing anyway. As I say, I think this decision has got to be placed in context. It concerns one company, and it's the ramifications are have not much. Well, I just say I would say don't go anywhere near as what's been argued. It's a ban on Muslims wearing the hijab, full stop. It is a bit more nuanced than that, I would say.
So you'd say that it's a red herring in a way. It's kind of a straw man. This thing on Muslims, the screaming headlines Muslim ban. It's Muslim hijab ban.
It gives fuel for the newspapers. It gives fuel for the sheikhs. It gives fuel for the institutions. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really change very much, I would say.
Okay. Well,
which may be controversial, but there we go. That's open for discussion. So with that, I thank you again for listening. Watch this space. Please subscribe. And until the next time, Assalamu alaikum.